All right. You think you're pissed off about taxes, huh? You think you've bitched enough about where your hard-earned cash goes.
Whoa.
Buckle up, Buttercup, because
Today's gonna be a good one.
we're diving headfirst into the goddamn abyss of the U.S. military budget. We're talking about the kind of money that makes even a goddamn Kardashian blush.
We're going deep on this one. We're dissecting excerpts from Wikipedia's military budget of the United States page. Think of it as the spark notes on how the Pentagon gets its allowance. It doesn't matter if you're a peacenik
Right.
or a goddamn war hawk.
It doesn't matter.
This shit affects every single one of us.
Absolutely. We're going to break down where those trillions disappear to, what kind of bullshit they're blowing it on, and how the U.S. stacks up against the rest of the world in this global dick measuring contest. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler, we're packing some serious heat.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Let's cut the crap and start with the sheer size of this thing. The U.S. military budget is the largest discretionary chunk of the federal budget, meaning it's the part they get to play with after covering the essentials.
And they're playing with a shitload of cash.
Essentials like cocaine and hookers.
Obviously. So we're talking hundreds of billions annually, right?
Right.
Lay some of those juicy numbers on us.
Hundreds of billions. Yeah. In 2022, they were playing with a whopping $777.1 billion.
Jesus.
And for 2023,
It's only going up from there.
they've got their eyes on a cool $737 billion. That's more than the next 10 biggest military spenders combined.
Holy shit. That's a lot of dough. You'd
Oh,
think
yeah.
they could at least win a war with that kind of cash, right?
Yeah.
So what are they blowing all this money on? I'm guessing a fuck ton of weapons.
Yeah, we're definitely stocking up on some serious firepower. But it's not just about the guns and bombs. It's about personnel operations, maintenance, research and development, healthcare for 9.5 million beneficiaries. The whole 9 yards. In 2019, for example, personnel costs ate up a whopping 39.14% of the budget.
Hold up. Almost 40% on personnel. Break that down for me. What does that even include?
Well, you've got your soldier salaries, of course.
Of course.
But then you've got housing allowances, health care, retirement benefits. The costs add up quickly when you're dealing with a force of this size.
Makes sense.
And that's not even factoring in the money going to veterans.
Oh, God. Okay, so we're paying for soldiers to play Call of Duty in real life.
Yeah.
But what about all those contractors I hear about? Are those guys part of this personnel cost, or are they siphoning off cash in their own little scam?
Oh, the contractors. Those guys are a whole other beast.
Right.
And they're getting a fat slice of the pie. In 2007, get this, payments to these support service contractors actually outspent equipment costs. We literally spent more on the guys who bring the coffee than on the actual weapons.
What the fuck? You're telling me we're spending more on private companies than on tanks and fighter jets?
Yeah.
This shit is starting to sound seriously fucked up.
Yeah, the role of these contractors has been exploding since 2001, and it's gotten so bad that even the Pentagon is starting to get nervous.
Really?
A 2011 review called them increasingly unaffordable. And when the Pentagon starts bitching about costs, things are out of control. It's like someone's been raiding the goddamn piggy bank, but they're too shit-faced to remember what they bought. That brings us to the GAO, or the Government Accountability Office.
Oh, boy.
Those are the guys who are supposed to keep an eye on how the government spends our money. And guess what?
What's that?
The Pentagon couldn't even get a clean audit from these guys for years.
So we're shoveling billions of dollars into this black hole, and they can't even tell us where the fuck it's going. Jesus Christ. This is more fucked up than a soup sandwich. What's the excuse this time? Did they accidentally use the budget spreadsheet as a beer coaster or something?
They're blaming what they call serious financial management problems.
Okay.
Which basically means they're so goddamn disorganized they've lost track of where the money's going. I mean, how do you lose track of billions of dollars? It's not like they left it in their pants pocket and put it through the wash.
All right. But losing track of a few bucks here and there is one thing. Are we talking about small-time fuck-ups, or is this some next-level weapons-grade incompetence?
Oh, it's definitely weapons grade. The GAO found $857 million in excess parts just lying around. That's enough to buy a small island, a private jet, and a lifetime supply of hookers and blow.
Damn, I could think of a few things to do with that kind of cash.
And then there's the infamous JLNS air defense balloon. That little gem cost us $2.7 billion.
$2.7 billion.
And was supposed to protect us from enemy missiles.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this thing. Sounds like a bargain. Does it at least work?
Let's just say it performed about as well as a screen door on a submarine. The damn thing basically failed. They spent billions of dollars on a giant balloon that couldn't tell the difference between a missile and a flock of goddamn geese.
You're shitting me.
I'm not shitting you.
All right, so we've established that the Pentagon couldn't balance a checkbook if their lives depended on it. But all this talk about waste makes me wonder, how the fuck does the U.S. military budget stack up against other countries? Are we just keeping up with the Joneses, or are we the biggest goddamn spendthrift asshats on the block?
Oh, we're not just keeping up with the Joneses, we are the goddamn Joneses. Remember that figure I mentioned earlier about spending more than the next 10 biggest military budgets combined?
Yeah, that was pretty mind-blowing. Makes you wonder what the rest of the world is thinking while we're throwing this cash around like a drunken sailor.
Well, in 2018, we accounted for a whopping 36% of global arms spending.
Holy shit.
To put that into perspective, China, who everyone seems to be shitting their pants over these days,
Yeah.
was only spending a measly $250 billion. They're practically playing with pocket change compared to us.
So we're not just winning the dick measuring contest, we're running laps around the competition. But all this military might has to come at a price, right?
Right.
What are we giving up to fund this global empire?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? While we're busy building aircraft carriers and stockpiling nukes, our infrastructure is crumbling, our healthcare system is a goddamn joke, and our education system is failing our kids. It's like we're living in a gilded cage surrounded by shiny weapons but lacking the basic necessities for a decent life.
It's like we're stuck in this endless loop of fear and paranoia, convinced that we need to spend more and more on defense to stay safe. But all this spending is making the world a more dangerous place, not safer. It's fueling arms races, creating resentment among other nations, and diverting resources from things that actually matter.
You hit the nail on the head. It's this self-fulfilling prophecy. We spend more on defense because we're afraid of our enemies, and our enemies become more hostile because we're spending more on defense. It's a vicious cycle that's leading us down a dangerous path.
So what the fuck do we do about it? How do we break free from this military-industrial complex that seems to have a stranglehold on our government? It feels like a goddamn David and Goliath situation. But instead of a slingshot, we've got a stack of overdue bills and a crumbling education system.
It's a tough nut to crack, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But giving up isn't an option. The first step is to shine a light on the bullshit. We need to expose the waste, the corruption, and the lack of accountability. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, as they say.
Okay, so we need to drag this shit out into the open. But how do we get people to actually give a damn? Most folks are too busy scrolling through TikTok to worry about some obscure government budget report.
We need to make it personal. People care about their own lives, their own families, their own communities. We need to show them how this excessive military spending is directly impacting their lives. We need to connect the dots between those billions of dollars being wasted and the lack of funding for schools, healthcare, and infrastructure.
So we need to hit them where it hurts. Their wallets and their quality of life. But let's be real. Even if we manage to get people riled up, how do we actually change this system? This military-industrial complex is a goddamn behemoth.
It's about changing the narrative. For decades, we've been fed this fear-based story that we need a massive military to protect us from the bad guys. We need to challenge that story and offer an alternative vision of security, one based on diplomacy, cooperation, and sustainable development.
So instead of bombs and bullets, we need to invest in peace and prosperity. Sounds good in theory, but how do we actually make that happen? We're not exactly dealing with a bunch of peaceniks in Washington.
It starts with us. We need to educate ourselves, raise awareness, and demand change from our elected officials. We need to support organizations that are working to promote peace and demilitarization. We need to vote for candidates who prioritize human needs over military spending.
Okay, so we need to get off our asses and make some noise. But this shit feels so overwhelming. Where the hell do we even begin?
Start by looking in your own backyard. Get involved in local politics, support community initiatives, and talk to your friends and family about these issues. Remember, change starts at the grassroots level.
All right, so we're not just bitching about the problem. We're actually trying to find solutions.
Yeah.
Like it. But let's be honest. This is a long-term game. We're not going to dismantle the military-industrial complex overnight.
Absolutely. But every journey starts with a single step. And the more people who join the movement, the faster we'll get there.
Well, on that optimistic note, let's take a quick break and come back for our final thoughts on this wild ride through the U.S. military budget. Don't touch that dial. All right, we're back. And I know this whole military budget thing can feel like trying to decipher a goddamn alien language. It's dense, it's complicated, and it's, frankly,
a little bit terrifying.
a bit terrifying.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. We can't just bury our heads in the sand and pretend this shit doesn't affect us. What we've been trying to do in this deep dive is strip away all the bullshit and jargon
Right.
and get to the heart of what this budget really means for us, the average Joes and Janes trying to make ends meet while the Pentagon is out there playing war games with our tax dollars.
And at its core, it's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right.
It's about choices. It's about priorities. It's about what kind of world we want to build, not just for ourselves,
Of course.
but for future generations.
It's about asking tough questions like, do we really need another goddamn aircraft carrier? When our schools are crumbling and people are struggling to afford health care, do we want to keep funneling money into this military machine that seems to thrive on perpetual war and conflict?
Or do we want to shift gears and invest in things that actually make our lives better?
Right.
Education, healthcare, renewable energy, a fairer economy, you name it. These are the things that will create genuine security and prosperity, not just for the United States, but for the entire world.
You know, we talked earlier about Eisenhower's warning about the military-industrial complex.
Oh,
It's scary how relevant that shit still is today, almost 70 years later.
absolutely. This complex has its tentacles wrapped around so many aspects of our government and our economy. It's like a parasite feeding off our fear and insecurity.
Right.
And it's distorting our national priorities.
And it's not just the politicians and defense contractors who are to blame. We, the American people, have become complicit in this system. We've bought into this idea that more weapons equals more safety.
Right.
And we've allowed this militarized mentality to seep into every aspect of our culture.
We've become so accustomed to this constant state of war. Whether it's actual wars overseas or the war on drugs here at home, that we've forgotten what it's like to live in peace.
And that's the real tragedy here. We become so obsessed with protecting ourselves from external threats
Right.
that we've neglected the real threats, the threats to our democracy, our economy, and our environment.
We've allowed fear to become our guiding principle.
Right.
And it's leading us down a dangerous path.
Yeah.
A path that ends in bankruptcy, both financial and moral.
So what's the alternative? What's the way out of this mess? I know you're not going to pull some magic solution out of your ass, but what are some things we can do to start changing course?
It's not about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. It's about starting a dialogue,
Okay.
challenging the status quo, and demanding more from our leaders.
Right. So we need to get loud, we need to get organized, and we need to make it clear that we're not going to stand for this bullshit anymore.
And we need to start imagining a different future. A future where our security is based not on military might, but on cooperation, diplomacy, and mutual respect.
That sounds pretty damn utopian, but I guess that's the point, right?
Yeah.
We need to aim high if we want to create real change.
We need to break free from this cycle of fear and violence and start investing in the things that truly matter. Education, healthcare, sustainable development, and a just and equitable society.
Those are some lofty goals, but I gotta admit, it feels good to talk about something other than bombs and bullets for once.
It's about reclaiming our humanity. It's about remembering that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And that our collective well-being is more important than any nationalistic ideology or military agenda.
Well said.
Oh.
All right, folks, we've thrown a lot of information at you today, and I know it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But the takeaway here is simple. Don't be afraid to question authority. Do your own research and get involved in the fight for a better future. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about some abstract budget. It's about our lives, our communities, and the future of our planet. Peace out, ATTRIBUTIONS.